Welcome into episode number 4 of 3 Up, 3 Down. I am your host, Rob Wong. A tough one for the Blue Jays as they dropped 2 of 3 to the Colorado Rockies, a team that lost 119 games a year ago. Maybe this is a different Rockies team we're seeing this year. They've definitely got some pretty strong arms coming out of the bullpen, but just a weird 3-game series down at Rogers Center. It begins with the unfortunate injury to Cody Ponce in game number 1 that really sent things sideways, especially the Blue Jays bullpen usage. Max Scherzer, though, a strong start in game number 2 to help get that win. And then in game number 3, you're feeling pretty good going into the series finale with Kevin Gausman, and he was incredible, giving the Blue Jays yet another strong outing to begin the season. But the offense unable to show up, mustering just that 1 run in 10 innings as the Rockies escape, taking 2 of 3. But lots to get to on this edition of 3 Up, 3 Down. Let's get it started. You wouldn't think so, but the Blue Jays actually have been one of the better offenses in baseball this season. They've been carried by great starts by guys like Kazuma Okamoto, Jesus Sanchez, Andres Jimenez, but others have really had some inconsistent starts. George Springer has a couple of home runs, but he's striking out over 37% of the time. Dalton Varsho, who was just incredible in spring training, has not been able to carry that over. Has just 3 hits in 20 plate appearances. Addison Barger, no hits in 16 plate appearances. Alejandro Kirk is 2 for 18. And even Vladdy, who has a bunch of walks and a bunch of singles and is getting on base at a high rate, just hasn't been able to showcase any of the power that we know he has in his arsenal. So will these things turn? Absolutely. That is a given, but it's just pretty jarring to see how a few of these guys have come out of the gate. I mentioned Jesus Sanchez, though, much like Kazuma Okamoto, has started to become a bit of a fan favorite. It always helps when you're playing well and hitting well, and he has so far. But he's just got this infectious joy that he seems to play with. It was really interesting to see him get a start against Rockies lefty Kyle Freeland on Wednesday, considering he doesn't have a great track record in his career versus southpaws. Maybe he will get more ABs against lefties than we think this season, especially if he's going the way he's going. But it will be very interesting to see how much of a leash he gets to start the year. Pretty remarkable that the Blue Jays were able to get him for the price of a Joey Loperfido, who, had his moments with the Blue Jays, but Sanchez has a much larger track record when it comes to hitting at the major league level. And, we see this talent, his ability to hit balls 420 feet. He's actually, cut down his strikeout rate quite a bit, only 10% on the season so far. I know it's a small sample, but historically he's someone that usually strikes out around 22% of the time. So maybe there have been some adjustments that David Hopkins and the Blue Jays hitting staff has been working on him to make sure he makes contact more often, because as we know, he's got huge exit velocities. He is someone that can get the bat on the ball more often. Then he's going to have some pretty good outcomes with, how hard he can sting it. So really a strong start to the season by Sanchez, and it has been a lot of fun to watch him so far as a member of the Toronto Blue Jays. So I asked people on Twitter what their biggest concerns were for the Blue Jays at this point of the season, where, hey, glass half full. They're 4-2 through 6 games. You win 4 of every 6 games over an entire season. You're going to win a ton of ball games. So that is the glass half full way to look at this start, despite dropping 2 of 3 to the Rockies. But the biggest concern I think a lot of people had, bullpen, and specifically Brendon Little, who has, unfortunately for him, become the target of ire for Jays fans once again, carrying that over from last season. Look, it has flat out not been good for him to start the year. I'm not going to sugarcoat it whatsoever. We heard and saw in spring training some of the adjustments he was planning to make with the addition of a forcing fastball, maybe even like a cutter, a hard slider that he was going to use. But in this outing in extras on Wednesday, he ditched the four-seamer completely, didn't really use much else, just kind of went back to his old arsenal. And I don't know if it's a case where they've already abandoned the experiment with the four-seamer, or if it was situational based on the hitters that he was going to face in the Rockies lineup. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But the results and even some of the process has not been particularly good so far this season. I thought it was a little bit crazy for people to be saying they wanted to designate him for assignment after Monday's game, Monday's outing against the Rockies, where he got absolutely crushed. I think it was even a Canadian senator from Saskatchewan was calling for him to be removed from the team and from the organization, which I thought was pretty crazy, but that's social media for you. To me, he is Mitch Williams. Yes, the former Phillies closer, wild thing that gave up the home run to Joe Carter in the 1993 World Series. Just like Williams, Little's effectiveness seems to waver, not only batter to batter, but pitch to pitch. One moment he's striking somebody out on 3 pitches. The next one, it's a 9-pitch walk. But undeniably, Little has talent. I don't think anyone disputes that. And when you're on a team with championship aspirations, it is tough because you would like to have a level of predictability in the bullpen, especially if you're going to be counted on as one of the 2 lefties. But for me right now, I am not completely giving up on Brendon Little. Maybe he does need to go down to AAA and work on whatever he needs to work on and get back to being the guy that we saw pre-All-Star break a year ago. But until that day comes where he no longer has options or the Blue Jays feel that there is someone not on the 40-man that deserves an opportunity to take his spot, we're going to be seeing Brendon Little still in this organization. They're going to continue to work with him to try to get him back on track. He's just got too much talent in that arm. The stuff is just too nasty when it's on point that I don't think you can just completely give up on him. So that's tough to hear, I'm sure, for some of the Blue Jays fans out there that have already made up their mind that Brendon Little is never going to be a successful major leaguer ever again. But look, we see this all the time where you've got relievers that maybe don't work out in one situation, they go somewhere else and they figure it out there. Those tend to be the guys with arm talent, and some teams feel like they can turn things around for him, and I imagine the Blue Jays feel the same for a guy like Brendon Little. So they're going to give him more opportunities, and we'll see if he can turn things around. On the flip side, you feel really good about the back end right now with guys like Jeff Hoffman, Louie Varland, Tyler Rogers, Mason Fluharty, who have all been excellent. Hoffman in particular, who aside from the homer he gave up to Shea Langoliers on opening night, has looked like the Hoffman we saw this time last year when he had that incredible April. We'll see how the Jays manage his workload this season. Having dealt with him for a year now, you would hope they know how to make sure to keep him fresh, ready to get through the whole season without any sort of a velo dip like we saw in the summer last year. But hats off to him. He's been awesome, as has Mason Fluharty, who added like 50 pounds of muscle this offseason. Dude is absolutely jacked. Lefties, righties, it doesn't seem to matter right now. His stuff is off the charts and can get either handedness out. So whether it's Fluharty, Hoffman, Tyler Rogers, Louie Varland, you feel really confident if you're John Schneider when you hand the ball to any of those guys in the back end of the bullpen. Lastly, a thought on 41-year-old Max Scherzer, who just continues to defy Father Time. 6 innings, 1-run ball in his season debut against Colorado. A far cry from the 3-inning outing he had in his Jays debut last year. It's still so cool to see a guy like him with his resume, someone who does not need to do this. He's got World Series rings, he's got Cy Youngs, he is going to Cooperstown one day. But for the love of the game, this guy is grinding through another season with a team he only started playing with last year. And also, this isn't, Ed Harris pitching for Cleveland in the movie Major League, where he's using Vaseline or rubbing a little jalapeno up in his nose, putting snot on the ball to get a few more inches of break. He's still out there chucking 95 miles an hour, snapping off nasty breaking balls, mixing in the changeup. It's pretty mind-blowing, to be honest, to see what he's doing at this stage of his career. The Blue Jays have been really fortunate to have some all-time players put on the blue and white in their careers, usually later in their careers. You think about the World Series years with Winfield, Molitor, Henderson, Cohn, Morris, Stewart, a bit of an asterisk in the mid-90s with guys like Clemens and Canseco, but you also had Frank Thomas in the mid-2000s, so I'm sure I'm missing a few guys out there, but even, the ones that they signed to minor league deals, but never made it back to the majors. Vlad Sr., Johan Santana, I think a lot of people forget, tried to make a comeback with the Jays, and of course Joey Votto a few seasons ago. So it's just amazing to watch Max Scherzer go out there and still be effective. This isn't just some type of retirement tour. He is contributing to a team that wants to make the playoffs, wants to make another deep run and get back to the World Series. So it's just awesome, and I really hope we all appreciate what we're getting to witness here with Max Scherzer. All right, that does it for another episode of 3 Up, 3 Down. The Blue Jays now head off to the Windy City for a 3-game series against the Chicago White Sox. The opener was set for today, but it was postponed due to rain, so they will kick things off on Friday. Dylan Cease makes his return to Chicago, facing off against Sean Burke, the pitcher, not the former NHL goalie. We'll see how many White Sox Cease will be able to strike out in his second outing as a Blue Jay after fanning 12 Oakland A's. Athletics, can't even call them Oakland anymore, but the A's struck out 12 times against Dylan Cease, so we'll see what he has for as an encore on Friday against the White Sox. Make sure to follow the pod on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Drop a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and let me know your biggest takeaway from today's episode. You can follow me on Twitter at RobWong34. Follow the show at 3_up_3_DWN. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Rob Wong. You've been listening to 3 Up, 3 Down.